Hi, I'm Ploy. I'm going to show you my process with how I start tracks generally, and also how to get the most out of a single sample by manipulation, and also a couple of tips on mixing down, which I think are quite essential if you're mixing down your own tracks. And the track that I'm going to show you is from the last record, which is Dark Lavis. Yeah, I'm going to show you my kind of usual production process broken down into a few ways. Usually I start with some kind of sample that I've heard or found. I like that as a kind of like jumping off point, especially if it's melodic, because melody is something I'm not so strong at. So starting with that is a nice basis to kind of build a tune around, and eventually I'll refine it in the process. Yeah, sometimes keeping the original sample, but sometimes not. This one in particular is from the latest record, the B-side, Dark Lavis, which I'm going to show you the sample I used and then how I manipulated it to break it down into like source material to then use in the track. Original sample is from like a Bollywood film soundtrack. So yeah, take that, drag it into Logic, and then I like to use this this sampler, which is Izotope Iris. It's really nice. I find this quite an easy one to get ideas going in. Drag that into there. Put onto radius RT, which means the original tempo of the sample is kept. This one was pretty easy. It's like an opening intro horn. That's at a lower pitch. You want to do zoom in to loop it up properly. It looks like it finishes about there. You want to find the right pitch that you want to use it at. So that's where the drums start. So we want to loop it from here to about there. Probably cut it off there, I would. Edit that so it's nice in time. You can even put a little bit of release on the amplifier envelope, so it kind of decays off a little bit to make it sound a bit more natural. Then once you've looped that up to how you want it, just record it in. I'll probably go. Bit too much release on that, so I'm going to take that off. Quantize it. Slow it down a little bit. Can extend it a bit. Once I've got that, I'd usually bounce it out into some audio. There we go, so we've got it repitched and sort of the right length that you want, so you can start using that in the track. Yeah, so that's how I resample something. Could even stretch it a little bit. Yeah, so that'd be the first part. So that's kind of like going to be the starting point of the track now that I've got that melody. Now for the intro part, I kind of still want to keep that, but I don't want that to be running throughout the whole thing. So you can start doubling it up and like applying different processes to it to kind of manipulate the sound a little bit. A good one for this one was the tremolator in Sound Toys. Yeah, and you can kind of play around with that, get it into different rhythmic patterns. Yeah, so once you've started manipulating your samples a little bit, you can then start building the track on top of it. So here we've got that sample with the tremolo on. Use that in the intro. A lot more staccato, kind of plucky sound. And then we've got the body of the tune, which is this bit. And then also, I like to kind of put a lot of reverb and kind of turn it into a droney type of thing. You could do that with feeding back reverbs, kind of big infinite spaces, and then bouncing that down in the same way. Just so you've got like, so there's 3 different sections there that have all come out of the same sample to kind of structure a tune together. So that's the way I'd go about using that sample. Once you've got that, you want to start putting some drums on top. So I like to layer my kicks up, at least 2 layers to a kick usually. I'd have like the low end part, which is quite a bassy hit for that one. It needs a bit more body in the mid. So you got that, whichever. Roll off the low frequencies so it's not clashing with your bass. And you got these 2. And then there's even lower sub bass underneath it. So I've got the first 2 layers rolled off. So the mid rolled off to about 500 hertz. That's the low, sorry. And then you got the mid layered with the sub. That provides all the body really in the kick. So there's no other kind of bass elements. Sits under the horn like that. He's slightly side-chained as well. Just so it's ducking out, adds to the rhythm, a bit more groove. Then you want to start adding put a snare in. Had that sat on top of the kick drum. Sort of a bit more of like a dancehall drum pattern for that. And then I layer some percussion, so I'd find sometimes like percussive loops in other tracks I might take from, or I might start like building little rhythm sections out of percussion and then bounce them down into one track and then cut them and then maybe resample them or loop them up. So this is just like a little percussion section, sits under there, quite rolling, and then some rhythmic hats and like a little 16th with some rolls. Because the idea basically for this one is you know, this horn sample and then drums, not a great deal else. So you kind of need you need the drums to kind of stand alone by themselves and still be interesting to listen to. So a couple more layers of those. That's the groove. That with the horn. A bit more of the kind of washed out, reverberated sound. Build some tension. Interplay that with the tremolo kind of modulation. Hear that building back in, so that acts as a fill. So it's just the way that, you know, that one source sample you can then get a lot of material out of if you modulate it correctly, and yeah, it adds a lot more to the track as opposed to if it was just that one original sample with some drums. Then I might add some synths, which I quite like, to kind of add a little bit more character and body, and just to play on top of the melody a little bit more. Got kind of like a bit of a ravey, kind of a square wave synth, which is, I use Helm for these kind of sounds, which is a free synth. It's pretty good. Developing the melody line a little bit more with those. Again, another kind of stretched, fed back version of the horn, stacked as another drone. Yeah, so it's sort of an example of how I try and get the most out of whatever you're sampling from in order to build the track on top of it. Yeah, so once the track's finished, I mix down all my own stuff. And I also do mix down work for other people as well, which I quite enjoy. But like the most basic thing with mixing down is gain structures and gain staging. I mean, I'll bounce down all the elements into audio, but I make sure nothing's in the red, nothing's clipping. So you can do that with like little bits of compression in this stage. It's about layering compression essentially, and not using loads in one go. So in this stage, I'll put a little bit of compression on the elements just so they're sat in the green and not clipping. And then when you bounce those into audio and put them into the new project to mix them down, you've got lots of headroom in the mix. That's the main thing. If everything's too hot and you're having to just pull main faders down or use heavy compression, then yeah, it's not going to sound as good at all, really. So I think, yeah, controlling the gains in the early stage is the most important part of mixing down, I think. And then also you want to use the space within the mix kind of creatively in order to give more space, or like the appearance of space, by using maybe some kind of you can get like little spread plugins where you can select the frequency that you want to move about into the stereo field, which is quite good on things like pads. Or also panning. Panning is like a really simple tool to kind of push certain sounds either left or right in the mix, and it just opens the space up a lot more. And if you automate that as well, that's when you can kind of get creative with mix down stuff. Automating, you know, where the pad's going to sit in the stereo field and push stuff around. It gives movement to the track that could otherwise sound quite flat.